Today we're talking about a diamond that weighs almost 190 carats with ties to the Russian Empire that may have been stolen from an Indian temple that could have been the lost great Mogul diamond, one of the most famous diamonds ever described. I'm Matthew Weldon, and today on Gem Pursuit we're telling the extraordinary story of the Orlov, one of the largest and most mysterious diamonds in history. Fenia, let's talk about dates, and let's talk about when was this diamond discovered, and then we'll talk about another number which is very important with this diamond, which is the weight and the size, because it's a huge diamond, isn't it?
It's a huge stone, and it's very difficult to talk about dates precisely because we're not really sure about the history of this specific diamond. We were able to offer more facts about the previous diamonds that we have covered in our last episode. However, with this one, things a little bit more, they're murkier, I would say. Some people believe that the Orlov is probably the same diamond as the Great Mogul, because of their similarities in their form and their cut, and because of some similarities in their internal inclusions as well. So we're not really sure about the Orlov, but we have a lot of information about the Great Mogul. We know that this particular diamond was discovered in the Golconda region at around I think it was 1650, so 1600s. And the story of this particular stone is directly linked to Shah Jahan. And we know this name, our listeners and ourselves, Matthew, from a previous episode.
Yeah, we just came across it, didn't
We
we?
did, yeah. Can you remember who Shah Jahan is?
Well, don't put me on the spot there, Fenia. Shah Jahan, was that to do with the Taj Mahal?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So this Shah Jahan was a very famous Mongol emperor who created the Taj Mahal for his beloved consort Mumtaz Mahal. This particular guy inherited the Taj Mahal diamond, what is known as the Taj Mahal diamond today. He got it from his father, and he
It's the
gifted
one that Robbie was wearing recently at the Oscars.
Yes, Margot Robbie wore this particular Cartier necklace that features this diamond. I think it was the premiere of the Wuthering Heights movie. I'm not sure, was it LA? This January, she wore this January. Shah Jahan, not he's linked not only with this. With the Taj Mahal diamond, but with the Great Mogul as well. Apparently, when the stone arrived to the hands of the emperor, it was large, Matthew. The rough was over 700 carats. So I assume like as big as an orange.
So it'd be 140 grams. So yeah, I'd say so. You think of a 1 carat diamond, which would be considered a very good size of stone. Well, maybe not so much in the advent of lab grown stones, but in a natural earth diamond, a 1 carat gem quality stone is a fifth of a gram. And this one is 140 grams. So it's enormous, about the size of an orange, small orange.
Shah Jahan received this stone. We believe that it arrived in his hands as a diplomatic gift. He hired a Venetian lapidary called Ortensio Borgio to cut the stone, basically. And things went extremely wrong after that because it's very difficult to cut a diamond. And this one had a lot of internal flaws as well. Borgio tried to improve its appearance, how it performed. It didn't go very well, though. The final result was a stone that weighed 280, I'm not sure, I think around that, carats. And it was like a Mogul cut, so a very specific type of rose cut, very popular in the Indian region back in the day.
Just to give an insight there, I think it's important to mention, we're going from 700 carats to 280. If you're listening to that, you're probably thinking, oh my God, they've lost well over half the diamond. But if you're cutting any diamond, you lose a good chunk of it no matter what. Because a rough diamond crystal is, like two upside down pyramids stuck together, right? So it's not exactly the right shape to wear as a faceted stone. And you do lose a lot. Like you can lose, for like an Asher cut stone, which is a good family. I think we should do an episode one day. Like you'll lose about 60% of the rough stone. So it's expected that you lose a very good amount of the rough. But For going a Mogul cut out of this large crystal, you'd probably expect to keep a bit more. The other thing is, if you have lots of inclusions, like you said, that makes cutting them extremely difficult. Because if you imagine a diamond cutter is polishing this stone and there's little inclusions, little bits of carbon sticking out unusual angles, if you hit that
Mhm.
irregularity in the crystal structure at the wrong angle, it can pull out a piece of the stone.
Okay.
That's why it makes it so difficult. If you have a very pure crystal, it's easier to polish. If you've got a piece of glass that's broken, has got a crack in it, if you start trying to polish that, there's a good chance the crack is going to get worse. Whereas if you get a really pure piece of glass that's unbroken, you want to polish it, it's not going to be as, it's not probably not going to break as easily, right? So that kind of, there's already a weakness in the stone, which is why with diamonds like when you go beyond SI2 to like I1, I2, I3 in terms of clarity, it's not necessarily that they're not beautiful stones. The reason the value goes down is that they don't wear as well. They're more prone to breaking, is one of the main reasons. So,
I
sorry,
see.
slight deviation there, Fenya.
No, but that makes total sense, and I think that like Borgia did not succeed. Like the emperor wasn't happy with the final result. But from what you told me right now, I understand that it's not that simple. Like it's not that easy to cut. The final result was a dome-shaped stone, 280 carats, a very particular type of rose cut. The bottom was completely flat, and it featured a flaw that was very distinctive. Like you can easily like observe it from afar at the bottom, and that infuriated Shah Jahan. And legend says that he was seriously considering taking Borgia's head off because of what happened.
Bit extreme. Although this is a once in a lifetime diamond, he's given it to the workshop, and this is so applicable today. Like if you give a really valuable piece of stock to the workshop and you're not happy with the result, you're really not happy with the workshop. And if this is like the biggest diamond at a time when, like taking people's heads probably wasn't as far fetched an idea, it kind of makes sense how angry he was. But I think he ended up fining him. Or
Yes, so Borgia was heavily fined after all. He didn't lose his head. He lost the majority of his assets, though, because in order to repay the emperor for the damage that he caused to the diamond, he had to basically give everything that he owned to. So it's a lot of damage, if you think about it. So yeah, the diamond stayed with the emperor for many years to come, and 50 years after it was discovered, so we're talking 1665, the famous French explorer and gemologist Tavernier visits, and he witnesses many of the treasures that the Mughals have in their possession, and one of them was this particular stone. And this is why we have such an detailed idea of how this stone looked like, because Tavernier described it in a lot of detail in his book The Six Voyages of Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. He makes sketches of the stone. He specifically said that it looked as if somebody got an egg and cut it in half. After that particular documentation, that particular incident, the history of this stone becomes murkier. We're not exactly sure what happened to it, but because we have a clear idea of its proportions and of its cut and of its flaws, many people believe that this stone is possibly the Orlov diamond as well, because the Orlov features the same characteristics, although it's considerably smaller. The Orlov is approximately 189 carats, but it features the same cut, the same Mogul rose cut, and it has the same flaw, the bottom facet, the flat facet.
so we don't know for sure.
We don't know for sure.
But for trying to fill in the gaps, extremely rare stone that the original person who commissioned the cutter in Venice, which let's not forget, Venice was one of the diamond cutting centers. Because it sounded unusual when it was like Venice got cut in Venice. It was like, oh, wouldn't it be Antwerp or Amsterdam or something? But Venice at the time was one of the main diamond cutting centers. But it would make sense to me that someone would acquire that stone and want to refine it. Now, 100 carats off it is a lot. I would have thought they would have wanted to keep it above 200. But with these inclusions that were in the stone, but it just makes it possible that something happened to it when they were trying to polish it, that more came off than they were expecting. Like if you had to make a firm decision, Fenia, and say, is it or isn't it, what would you say?
I can only speculate, guys. I cannot commit to a certain answer, I'm afraid, because I don't know what happened to the stone.
Very diplomatic, Fenia. Extremely diplomatic, yeah.
So yeah, we don't know what happened after, but the thing is that the stone ends up in Amsterdam at some point. Eventually, it ends up at the hands of Catherine the Great. There are multiple stories. Some people say that the Great Mogul, or this particular stone, the Orlov Diamond, ended up in Europe through theft. So there is this story that says that the diamond used to be employed as the eye in an idol in one of the temples in India.
Sounds like the Hope Diamond.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like the Hope Diamond. I think it makes sense a little bit if you consider the shape of the stone. Like it's large and it has like the bottom is like flat, and I think it has another facet on top that it's also quite flat. So from the top, it could look like a large eyeball if you think about it.
A very large, shiny eyeball.
I mean, if it's the eye of a god.
Exactly, Fenya. But it could be in a sculpture, it would look incredible. And I can imagine for the, Tavernier or whoever saw this, the French soldiers, like it would have been quite incredible to see it. I would say it would have suited that purpose. It blows my mind to think that they'd use a big diamond like this as part of a sculpture.
So the legend says that it was a part of a sculpture in a temple, and a French soldier saw the diamond and he really wanted it for himself. So he crafted this scheme. He tried to convince the local priest that he wanted to convert to Hinduism, and he spent multiple months trying to convince everybody that he was a very pious person. He ended up becoming a member of the temple, and eventually he was trusted enough to be left alone with the statue at night to guard it. And he took his chance. He removed the stone from the statue, and he disappeared in the middle of the night. Some people say that he went to Madras, which is a city that overlooks the Bay of Bengal. And then he found a merchant from London. He sold the stone to the English merchant. That man took it to the UK, and then he sold it to another merchant in Amsterdam. And this is how the stone ended up there and eventually in the hands of Catherine the Great. Another legend says that when a particular Persian emperor, Nadir Shah. So this particular man was like a Persian emperor. At some point, he invaded Delhi, which used to be the capital of the Mughal Empire. And they say that he retrieved the stone from the Mughals in 1739. And he had it in his possession until he was assassinated in 1747. Mind you, Catherine the Great ascended the throne in 1762, so we're very close. Those two incidents are very close. We can't really tell, but the thing is that in some way, the diamond was removed from that particular, from that certain part of the world, and then it was moved to Amsterdam.
Yeah, and I found it there, and I guess once it's there, like, these stories start to go out and people start to hear about, oh my God, there's this enormous, half an egg-shaped diamond, right? Which again is so unconventional to like what a modern diamond would be like, right? If we think of a diamond, it's got like obviously the table at the top, and then it goes out to the sides and it comes to a point. People around Europe, all the royalty are talking about this type of diamond that's got a flat piece on the bottom, and then it kind of domes up to this kind of almost a slightly almost pointy at the top, but it's got a little flat facet at the top. So everyone's talking about it. There's rumors of the price, which is said to be like just exorbitant, which sounds like you'd expect it to be exorbitant for a diamond of this size. But even taking that into consideration, it was just thought to be absolutely, out of this world price wise, which is very important about how it was actually transacted. So, Catherine the Great,
Before we move to Catherine, I have a question, Matthew. Do you think that the characteristics of this particular stone justify its price?
It's hard to say. Like at the time, what's interesting is at the time and now, these really, really important, like once off diamonds, they can go for anything. Like if you look at some of these big sales that happen about, rare blues or pink diamonds or unusual shaped diamonds or historical jewelry, the prices can go really, really high. And the question is, like, find me another. Like, who knows? Really, at that level, it's whether who really wants it. And the people who want it usually have the resources to try and buy it, and they're not going to let it go over, a certain sum of money. So when you take into consideration, Fenya, all of that, right? The size, the color, the history. Okay, yes, it was going for an exorbitant price, but as I mentioned, try find another. But if you're looking for a really special, unusual diamond, historical one, at Courtville we specialise at finding those. So just do give us a shout out, and we'll try our best to get you one. Sorry, Ross, I had to get that plug in there.
Did you just suggested that we can find a stone like the Great Mogul for somebody?
Hey, it's not called Gem Lost. It's called Gem Pursuit.
Great.
Okay, so
That's
there we
good.
go.
That's good.
Right.
That's the spirit.
Now, where were we?
Catherine the Great.
Catherine the Great.
Catherine the Great.
Great woman.
Fascinating woman. Empress of all Russia. She reigned for over 30 years, more than 3 decades. Originally born in Prussia, she moved to Russia to marry Peter III, the Russian emperor, and she eventually took the throne for herself through a coup in 1762. She eventually became one of the most influential figures in Russian political history. She significantly expanded Russia. She promoted arts and education and ideas of enlightenment of that particular movement. She was very famous for her intelligence and her political skills, but she was also infamous for her love of jewelry. Now, Catherine had accumulated a large collection of precious stones and jewelry. She did not care about the stones solely because they looked pretty, but she employed jewels as a tool. And when the diamond that we're talking about today reached Amsterdam, Catherine learned about it and she really wanted to get her hands on this particular stone. Initially, rumors say that she decided not to move forward with the purchase because of the price. Eventually, she did purchase it. She did get it, though. There are 2 legends. Again, 2 stories that explain how that happened. The first one is very romantic, the other one is more realistic. Which one of the 2 do you prefer the most, and which would you like us to talk about?
I prefer
first?
the romantic one.
The romantic one, good. So, Catherine was famous for her personal love life. She had this tendency to associate herself with powerful men. Most of the times they became her lovers. She used her connections to advance herself politically. And there was a particular man, Count Gregory Orlov, a nobleman, a military figure, that he and his family played a very important role in Catherine acquiring the throne for herself. They say that his brother actually strangled Peter III. Anyways, he was a lover and a political ally for the Empress. At some point, they started drifting apart from each other for many reasons. Some people say that Catherine got bored of him. She had many, many lovers, and when she was done with somebody, she moved to the next person, which is very rare if you think about it for for women in history and for female monarchs especially. It's something that it's very common for male monarchs, but for queens, something very unique, I would say. So the story says that she either got bored of Orlov or she found somebody else, or she was threatened by him. There are rumors that he wanted to marry the empress, and that would undermine her own authority. She was very smart. She would never do something like that. When Orlov was heartbroken, and when he learned that this particular diamond was in Amsterdam and that Catherine wanted to buy it, but she wouldn't do it because of the price and probably because of the reaction of the people to the amount of money that she would have to spend to acquire the stone, he decided to get it himself and give it to her as a gift. So a very romantic gesture, if you think.
Sure, that's the thing that happens. That's a tale as old as time, and it's still happening. Someone sees a piece of jewelry that they really like, and then someone is like, hears about it, and goes, "Well, to impress this person, I'm gonna get it for them."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting that really was, well, of that version of what could have happened. It was the crux of it.
Yes. So he got it for her. It didn't work though. Like she was very grateful for the stone, but it didn't rekindle their relationship. She rewarded Orlov with a palace called the Marble Palace. But that wasn't what he wanted, really. She eventually asked him to leave Russia and travel around Europe. That was something that she used to do when she wanted to get rid of somebody politely. And Orlov, resumed his life traveling around Europe, self-exiled, and eventually he developed some form of dementia at the end of his life. So a very sad story. So that's the romantic version.
God almighty, don't tell me the non-romantic version. Oh my God. Funny enough, there's the core pieces of that might have happened, and then there's all the drama left and right of it. But what's the non-romantic version?
So the other version says that Catherine really wanted the stone and she wouldn't give up, but she had to purchase it in a very smart and discreet way. So she needed somebody to intermediate for her. I'm pretty sure that you have covered the affair of the diamond necklace related to Marie Antoinette in a past episode. This particular necklace was so expensive and it eventually ruined her reputation because people thought that she spends a lot of money for no reason. Catherine didn't want the same thing to happen to her, so she was looking for somebody to mediate for her, and Orlov could be the person for this particular cause. And we have archival material from one of her court bankers who has noted down the transactions and what was going on. So that's a much more believable story. Orlov bought the diamond for herself after her own instructions. Maybe he thought, he hoped that if he does this for his empress, maybe she will eventually change her mind. I'm not sure.
It's an interesting way of doing it, though. Okay, so yeah, use an intermediary so that she's not directly the point of contact.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, if she's going to end up having the stone on display in the palace what was the room,
the brilliant room.
The brilliant room, yeah. So you're going to put it in the brilliant room. I mean, people are going to see it anyway, and
yes.
In a way, it doesn't matter how she got it. If people know that she had it and that it was very expensive, they're going to put two and two together.
I think the way matters though, because if she buys it for herself, she deliberately uses funds of the Russian state. Whereas if a lover buys it for her, I got it as a gift, I didn't spend anything on it,
Just plausible deniability.
Yes.
Yes.
So no matter how it reached her hands, it did reach her hands eventually. And Catherine, notably, she never actually wore it herself. She named the diamond after her lover to honor him, or maybe hide the fact that she had a say in buying it and spending funds on it. We don't know why she did it. But she never actually wore it. She used the diamond on a scepter. Is that how you pronounce it, Matthew?
Scepter.
Scepter.
Yes. The spelling of it looks like scepter, but it's on the scepter.
So it's placed on the scepter. The scepter was created around the diamond itself, and above the diamond we have an eagle, like the Russian regalia, created by a black enamel. So a very beautiful, impressive piece of royal regalia. And she displayed this particular piece of jewelry in the brilliant room. And right now, today, it is, I think, positioned in the Kremlin.
So there's two versions that could have happened here. Which version do you think is more plausible to have happened?
Can I cheat and propose like an intersection? So I don't think that Catherine would have given up so easily. And if she really wanted the stone, it makes sense to try to acquire it through different means. So for me, it sounds very plausible that she employed Orlov to intermediate for her in order to acquire the diamond. The fact that we have documentation from the imperial banker as well regarding the transactions supports this particular claim. However, I don't consider it extremely. I don't think that it would be impossible that Orlov was hoping that him assisting in the entire situation would possibly favor, would like restore Catherine's favor towards him. Hope dies last. That's what they say, right? And especially if he was like still interested in her romantically and she started having feelings for somebody else, I think that it makes sense that he would try to win her back with like any way he could. And buying a large diamond for her, I don't know.
The most expensive, unsuccessful romantic gesture of all time. You know what they say, Fenia? When the legend becomes fact, just print the legend. So Fenia, Catherine gets the diamond. She puts in the scepter, right? The state, part of the imperial regalia of Russia. But after that, and it remains part of the regalia throughout the Romanov era, it's hidden during Napoleon's invasion in 1812. Obviously, famously, Napoleon very nearly got to Moscow, um, very much like the Nazi invasion in World War II. The Russian winter saves them, right? Saves them. But it survives the Russian Revolution, and unlike many of the jewels, and we talked about this before a lot about the sale of the Russian jewelry, including a lot of Fabergé pieces. The Orlov is not sold out of Russia. It is kept in the Kremlin today as part of imperial heritage, right? Very important. Now, there's often something confused with this diamond, right? And it's actually one of the things I was looking up for as I was getting ready for here. I read this article, and I only realized after quite a few minutes I was actually reading about the wrong diamond, right? Because there is another diamond called the Orlov, but it's called the Black Orlov.
So I wasn't aware of this diamond before, but from our conversations, it sounds like a fascinating story. Apparently, this stone is supposed to be like cursed. So again, a stone from India. I think it was also positioned as the eye of a particular statue.
It was supposed to be the eye of Brahma.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yes, supposedly cursed. I mean, I don't know if I believe in these curses, Fenia. But I mean, this one did seem to have a characteristic whereby the people who had it seemed to end up jumping off buildings, right? Which in the stories of princesses, people who've purchased it, and they ended up meeting the same fate. So, I mean, yeah, you could say that was part of it, or is it just coincidence? I think it was probably just coincidence. But it is an impressive stone in its own right. It's a black diamond. It's 67 and a half carats, just under 67 and a half carats, cushion cut. And as I said, cursed, but it unsubstantiated. It was recut in the 1950s from a much larger stone. And if you imagine cutting a black diamonds, why are they called black diamonds? Because you can't see into them. So that means they've got a lot of carbon inclusions. Um, so I mean, you can forget about clarity. There's no clarity grade on a black diamond because you can't see into it, right? But when you try to polish a black diamond, it's going to be very difficult, right? Because every time you hit the polishing wheel, there's chances that pieces could break off, that it could go wrong. Much like the Orlov or the Mogul diamond that was polished in Venice by
Borgia.
Borgia, it was very difficult to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this one had the same thing. It was recut in the 50s. It's now part of a necklace that has other diamonds. It's quite an impressive looking pendant in the necklace. But it's important that we mention the Black Orlov because it's very easily confused. It obviously has the same name. Um, It's quite different, though. Very different. Very valuable in its own right, but absolutely not the Orlov.
I find it fascinating that diamonds of this magnitude and of this, um, like so special historic stones are usually connected with stories of theft and lust and romantic heartbreak and murder and curses. Like, I wonder if we get so impressed and taken aback by how beautiful they look that we have an internal need to shroud them, if that's a word, if that's a verb.
That's a word. No. You're on it. Yeah, shroud them in
Them
mystery.
in mystery and allure and mystique. I'm not sure.
Definitely. These big stones, when something happens, it obviously sticks to them. But what you also, I think there is a pragmatic element to it as well, in that these big diamonds and big stones are typically acquired by very high profile people, sometimes in volatile situations. So they actually do encounter a lot of drama in their life. So it's not, and then because of the mystique around them, it's like amplified. It's like, it's, when people go fishing and they like 10 years ago, oh my God, I caught this enormous fish. And then, 10 years later, it's like they literally caught a shark, right? It's just, the story gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets more dramatic. And then there was a boat, and then someone fell overboard, and then they wrestled it back onto the boat. Like, they just get legs and grow. And I believe that what you're saying is absolutely correct, that people, they do have a need to attach these mysteries and shroud these stones in mysteries, but also because of their importance and the scenarios that they're acquired from usually, or where they're found or who had them, there actually is a lot of stories around them too. The Black Orlov Fenia has also been sold many times. The first recorded sale of the Black Orlov was in 1969, when the stone fetched a pretty impressive price tag of $300,000 in 1969. Okay, so it's a while ago. A little over 20 years later, 1990, it was auctioned by Sotheby's, where it sold for $99,000 to an unknown buyer. Now, that's quite interesting. It went down in 20 years. However, in 2006, which is only 17 years later, it sold for 16 years, actually. It sold for 352. Its estimate was 100 to 200,000. So it actually sold for double its estimate. It's been in many museums, during that time as well. So actually relatively reasonable, I would say, but for like what is, a 60 carat odd diamond, 67 carat stone. But yeah, important stone, but doesn't come close to the original Orlov. The Orlov is one of those stones that reminds us a diamond is never just a diamond. It can be a relic, a weapon of image making, and a failed love offering, or a symbol of an empire. And in this case, it became all four. If you enjoyed today's episode, everyone, make sure you're following Gem Pursuit on your podcast app, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Instagram at Gem Pursuit Pod for more behind-the-scenes content. Experts at courtville.ie is the email for any questions, diamond-related or otherwise. And thanks to my co-host, Fenia, today for joining us. Thank you, Fenia. Thanks to Colin Weldon for videography and Ross Hannon of Tape Deck for producing this episode. For me, your host, Matthew Weldon, thanks for joining us, and until the next time, happy hunting.